Hello, everyone, and welcome to the GlobalLogic Cafe LinkedIn Live Conversations. Our LinkedIn Live conversations on the GlobalLogic Cafe are going to be all about careers, technology, leadership, and diversity. We welcome our speakers for today. Introducing our host for today, Piyush Jha, Vice President, Engineering and Technology, GlobalLogic. Let's welcome Piyush with a huge round of applause.
Hello, folks. Welcome to the LinkedIn Live GlobalLogic Cafe. This is Piyush Jha. I head technology and industry solutions at GlobalLogic. It's a pleasure to be in front of all of you, talking about careers and approaches to careers that we may take. The topics that we have chosen are around technology and product, which makes it pretty much interesting for a lot of us. Allow me the pleasure to introduce Pinkesh. Pinkesh is the co-founder of IPL and has done a lot of stuff in product, which kind of is a stream that many technologists pick up. Many technologists are thinking about whether that is the right career move to pick up, or that's not the right career move to pick up. Which which prompted us to choose this as a theme for the show today, because we wanted to break some myths. Maybe in the process we end up creating some myths. I get the easy role to play today, opposite to the role that I typically play of answering questions to investors, to customers, at home, at office, all the places. I get the easy role of asking those questions today, and Pinkesh, you get the tougher role of answering those questions today. I think we'll start. And the first time I heard about LinkedIn Live and the stuff that we wanted to do, I felt it sounded like LinkedIn Light, which essentially to me meant that we wanted to use this forum to do some informal conversations with people that we hear about, people that we respect, so that we get to know more about them, what they have been about, what it means to them, and how have they shaped their own careers, right? So I think, Pinkesh, it'll be a good thing to talk about yourself to start with, but also talk about why and how did you use product as an option coming from the technology world. I see your background contains a lot of technology and software engineering and whatnot. How did you choose products as your area to play in, and what was the backstory to that?
Absolutely happy to participate. And first of all, thanks for having me in this cafe. It certainly feels good. It's actually bright and early morning here in United States where I am, and so happy to participate and get this opportunity to share and learn from each other. So coming back to your question, I'm a hardcore engineer. My bachelor's, my master's at Purdue has always been in the computer science area. I actually super specialized in cybersecurity, and in fact started my career as an engineer and moved into an engineering manager, where I actually become an accidental product manager. So I wish I had a better story. I wish I had a better plan for myself, but that's kind of how it happened. So I'm one of those accidental product managers, and here's how it happened. There's a small startup that I was part of in Houston, Texas, and the boss walks up, on a Friday afternoon and says, three of you. So there are three of us who are engineering managers in this 120 plus company, smallish, growing startup, and says, look, I'm going to change your compensation model. And generally, you don't pay attention to everything your boss has to say, but when it comes to compensation, you definitely put the phone down and now listen, right? And so he said, look, here's how it's going to work. Option A, you have a salary. Obviously, you have a variable bonus, which is tied to company's performance and a lot of other things. In fact, later did we realize that these variable bonuses are sometimes tied to so many parameters that you need an app to figure out how they actually get paid, including what was the weather last quarter. So you have that. Or option B, we get away with the variable bonus and you are variable bonus is going to be tied back to a percentage of the revenue that your product makes, that you are associated with as an engineering leader. And you have until Monday morning to figure out. If you don't want to change it, continue with option A or switch to option B. Two of us, long story short, on Monday, come back and say, you know what, we're going to take option B. We're going to be crazy enough to try this out. And I think that was the day where, without knowing, we actually accidentally moved into a product management role. Now, the interesting thing, Piyush, about this is that the role changed, the title did not, right? All of us were still called engineering leaders, but the way our mindset changed from that day onwards was dramatically different, right? Instead of discussing how are we going to solve this XML parsing problem as an engineer in our engineering teams 10 seconds faster, the question was, who's the customer? Why are we even doing this feature? Are we going to make more money? Are we going to generate more revenue? Remember, because my variable bonuses are now tied to the sale of the product that I'm associated with, not with the company's performance. And so I think that was the switch. To be honest, none of us knew, none of us were formally trained on product manager or product management skills, and we kind of learned. In fact, I have to confess, I had to hire a product manager so that I can learn from him on my team, right? Because product management skills are very different. While it's intuitive to a lot of people, there's a lot of structure, a lot of process, and so that's kind of how the journey began. Uh, you know, uh,
Sure. I think that is a pretty interesting journey, and the selfish motive that we had to inspire more people to take product as a career. Uh, I think the answer that you give actually gets in line with that. Careers at Global Logic are a pretty important part of what we do. My personal feeling is that if you look at two vectors that impact an employee, one of them being the comp that you give to the employee, like you mentioned, variable and fixed and whatnot, and the other being the career that you give to an employee. It's pretty similar to the man and the fish analogy, where the career that you give to the employee is much more important than the compensation that you give to the employee, because comp is something that will determine what the person takes away in the next year. But if you provide a great career track, if you provide a different career track, that is something that somebody keeps for a lifetime. Which is essentially why we have always stressed on people taking experiments with their career, doing different things, doing different things in technology, different things in product, pursuing visual design as a career, even as an engineer, because we feel that people bring, apart from the training that they've had as as a graduate from somewhere, people bring in a lot of skills, and that skill adds a flavor to the job that a person does.
yeah.
And that may not be the first calling of an employee. I could start as, let's say, visual designer, but I could always be more technically oriented, which essentially means that my future calling is possibly to become an architect. And in the world today, I keep saying that most of the coding that is done is being done by editors, and maybe in a couple of years time, most of the coding that will be done by bots, right? Bots would, I would just need to say that I need to write this function with this algorithm, and a bot would code that for me. Effectively, what one could do is think of the product that you want to build, think of the business problem that you want to solve, and think of the quickest, if most efficient, and the most stylish way to solve that business problem, right? So I think it goes extremely well in tune to the line that we have typically been taking at Global Logic. Pinkesh, the next thing that I wanted to ask you is how and why IPL? How did that happen? And take us through that journey. Possibly that backstory is more interesting than the first one.
Yeah, so I think in the episodes that would follow, post this accident that happened in Houston, Texas, I think I spent about 12, 14 years in the industry as a product manager, as a general manager, most recently the global vice president for one of the business units in McAfee. Um, And I think one thing became very clear, that while product management is an art and science, it's a combination of skills and competencies, which essentially revolve around customer context, business context, and innovation context. Um, that that level of awareness, that level of structured opportunity to build a career was kind of missing in other parts of the world outside of United States, right? And so often when I would come to India, to spend time with both at a personal and a professional level, I would realize there's a lot of good graduate schools which are producing um, you know perhaps great business managers, but there are very little product thinking. There is very little product mindset and skill set that was there. And I think every CEO I met at least about 50 CEOs in India whose emerging theme was, hey, look, how do we kind of move away from being a better, faster, cheaper, like a local captive center with a low cost arbitrage, which is how they were set up in India, to more of a contributor, a co-creator within a product context. And I think the number one missing link was the talent pool that actually could understand, exercise, and play the role of product managers. And when I say product managers, again, I mean the role, not the title, right from an associate product manager all the way to a senior director of product manager, product marketing, product design. All of these are essentially multiple titles, but they kind of revolve around the same role. And so we saw this huge vacuum. A lot of people actually had gotten together and thought about it before I got involved. And that's where the mission statement was kind of set, that look, how do we create 10,000 product leaders in India? And that's the single line mission statement with which an institute was created, essentially to be focused in building this capacity in our ecosystem to produce enough product thinkers, product designers, product managers that will help all the companies, whether you're a startup wanting to start your own as an entrepreneur, or whether you are a progressive company like GlobalLogic, where you want to kind of bring innovation, for yourself or on behalf of your clients from within the organization, all the way to a pure product MNC, right? And so that's kind of how this journey started. Passion for education, passion for sharing, and kind of giving back a little bit also prompted all of us to jump in and start this movement, if you will, right? So think of this as like a business school just focused for product, industry and product outcome, just like what NID does for design. Speaking of analogy, or what NIFD does for fashion, is kind of how this has been envisioned now. So it's been an amazing journey since the last 7 years. Since it has started, it has kind of grown, taken its own roots. A lot of innovation has happened in that space, but that was the genesis of how this started, and that's the outcome. I think that the system is pointing towards to generate, for the ecosystem.
Sure. I think let's start with breaking some myths, right? Which is something, if I look at what you have done, you are pretty good at, and that's something that I always feel comfortable in, to try and break a fixed mindset. Most of what I've done from that perspective is because of esteemed mentors that I've got all around. One of my professors when I was at IIT Delhi, I always felt that I was a pretty bad, lousy coder, and I've never believed that I can really code well. And when he was encouraging me to do more in computer science, his take always was that you could code in any language that you want to. It is irrespective, immaterial, till the point you understand the basic philosophy behind what you're coding, till the point you understand the algorithms behind what you're doing. I think that is what makes you a good software person, rather than your skills in C++ or Java, or something like that, right? Talking of Global Logic, I've tried a lot of different roles in whatever I've done. Every couple of years, I try to do something different, and people like Sumit and Nitesh, who lead Global Logic, they've always been encouraging me to take different risks, so as to say, in the careers that we do, and do better, which is something that I keep passing on to whoever I mentor or meet. And I think from your perspective, Pinkesh, to people who want to take product as a career, uh, what are the key skills that you feel that are most important for somebody who can take up product as a career? Because as we all understand, uh, the mass that comes from the ground in software companies like ours is either into engineering or into quality, right? Most of us, in 80-90% of us, start as either developers or quality analysts, right? And I have a feeling, most of the product guys that I have on my teams today, they are not people who started their careers or who got introduced to the company as a product owner or as a business analyst. Most of them started as engineers and then moved into product, and which is why I feel that that is more to do with skill that someone has, and that has less to do with a lot of in-house training that you have already had. If somebody has the mindset, one could switch. One could become an architect, or one could become a PO or a BA tomorrow. According to you, what are the basic skills that one would need, and how do we encourage more people to take product as a career?
Yeah, so I think it's a brilliant question, one that gets asked quite often, and one that actually is puzzling thousands of people, especially in India, because the awareness of this role, um, uh, the understanding of this role is still kind of, up and emerging, right, in some sense. Uh, but here's the interesting backdrop to your question, right? I think there are 1.8 million product managers in the world. Only about 65,000 of them exist in India. Now, if you look at this broad contrast of the huge gap that we have in this part of the world, now if you map this statistic, put next to the interesting statistic about world's biggest pool of engineers, arguably, are going to be in India, right? And so while we know that there's a lot of raw potential for a lot of technology talent in this part of the world, the numbers on the product side are extremely small, and that creates a wonderful opportunity for a lot of, like you said, business analysts, project managers, engineers, developers, architects, especially, to kind of consider moving into this role. Now, first thing that you have to important is, as you rightly said, Piyush, is it's about mindset, right? You need to enjoy building something. You need to enjoy solving a problem. You have to enjoy the why and a little bit of the what before you get pulled down into the how, right? And that's a mindset. That's not something that you can easily acquire in a classroom. You can develop that mindset by talking to mentors, reading the right things, getting yourself exposed to a bunch of different disciplines. But it's really, you have to enjoy that. You have to enjoy that customer context, business context, and innovation context is the first important requirement, I think, as a prerequisite that I would recommend anyone who's considering kind of moving and switching into this zone. On the second part, which is a skill set, is fairly well defined, fairly structured. There are 25 competencies that a global product manager should have. And those 25 competencies are grouped into kind of 5 buckets, right? Your market analysis skills, who's the customer, what segment should I go after, what problems are worth solving. Not every problem is going to become a product, and not every product is going to become a real business, right? So how do you become choosy? Which problems are worth solving? A customer is asking for a feature. Not every request becomes a feature, right? So how do you prioritize? A lot of that falls into your market analysis. Your second one is strategic planning. You have an idea, and you've also developed a prototype, and you've got a validation with first 50 customers. What's the business plan look like? Are we going to make any money? How much money do we need to make? By the way, that's another interesting thing. In the last 5 years, the metric of monetization is no longer money. Now, this is funny. The word monetization talks about money, but the metric of monetization is not necessarily only money. We know many companies. One of our wonderful favorite ones is the WhatsApp, right? A company that never made a penny, still not making one, perhaps no plans in the immediate future to make one, yet worth $18 billion. So the monetization models, the business models, all of that goes into your strategic planning. Then you have your product planning, which is a lot of the engineering cycles, Scrum, Agile. How do you kind of build stuff on the right budget, on the right schedule, with the least amount of risks? And then you have your go to market, which is how am I going to take this product out to market? And finally your sales enablement. So these five categories is the group of skills that one needs to really master, one needs to kind of embrace as they start their journey into the global product management space. Now, of course,
Pinkesh, I think
it's a very detailed version, and I'm sure we can speak on it for hours, but I can point you to some links later, or share it with the audience, and you guys can share it with them, so they can also take a look at it a more structured way as well.
Yep, I think we will share some of this stuff with our audience. Most of the audience, as you'd realize by now, is engineering audience, and engineers think binary, right? So the moment you mention 25 skills, till we bucketize them and present it in a good palatable format, we may be driving some of these guys away. I'll try to pull the conversation to something that may drive people towards us. And yeah, there's another thing that I had found pretty interesting in what I read in some places that you had said, and you had also mentioned it before, I guess. You mentioned that jugaad is a skill that is pretty common in India. We know how to get things done, and I typically take it in a good manner rather than a bad manner, because essentially, end of the day, the work needs to get done, and till we get the work done, of course you can apply polish and style and finesse to it at different levels, but there needs to be a mindset. Of course we need to tone that mindset up, but there needs to be a mindset to get the thing done. And you had mentioned that as a very viable skill for product people, right? Would you want to throw some light on this forum on what of it?
Yeah. This word jugaad gets thrown around uh, in a very jugaad way, and so I'm gonna replace that. For the purpose of this conversation is almost like a problem solving, right? Essentially, it's a problem solving skill. How do you solve difficult problems with the least possible amount of resources and time? May pertain to one of those outcomes as jugaad. I think this is a very, very crucial skill for every engineer to develop and enjoy. The important part is that, like you said, if you're a binary person, you just tell me what to do. I go in my lava lamp, dark corner, and get it coded up. Then perhaps product management may not be as exciting to you, isn't it? So, and there's a lot of scope and role for an engineer to grow within the engineering talent, and to become, CTO. So it's not like you have to become a product manager, but if you are wanting to shift, I think having that sense of problem solving, that itch, that burning sensation to solve the problem first, even to identify a problem. You and I, Piyush, both will go down the same street in San Francisco or Bangalore, and you may pick up a different set of problem by looking around the window of the car, and I may pick up a different set of problems by looking at the same route in the same car sitting with you. And so our ability to spot patterns, to identify what is the pain point, who has that pain point, what are the alternatives to that pain point for that end customer, is the first part. Then what we call the problem discovery, right? And then the second part is, how do I now apply problem solving skills, to bring that jugaad in solving that problem with the least amount of resources. And I think at the early stage of these products, this skill becomes very, very crucial, Piyush, compared to perhaps scaling an existing product, right? Where there's an existing product with an existing customer base, how do you grow from 10 to 1,000 is a very different problem than going from 0 to 10. So I would say this is a very, very crucial
Yes.
skill, especially in the first part of what we call problem solution fit. right? The time when you are going from 0 to 10.
Let's talk acceleration, because that is something that, that's another thing that we Indians love a lot. How do we accelerate our careers, and how do we get to the next levels faster? How do we get things done? In the tech hierarchy, the whole thing is pretty established, right? And you generally take a road that is less traveled, because you believe in yourself. You feel that if you can put in more, you'll get more bang for the buck, right? Defining acceleration and defining career tracks, where do you see, how do you see a product manager or a product owner or a business analyst going through the rungs in let's say 10 years of his career? Let's assume somebody is a PO at an 8 year, 9 year landmark of experience level. How do you see somebody's career evolving if somebody is ready to put the hard work in, right? Burn the midnight oil, as they say. How do you see the career track progressing, and where do you see the person ending up at let's say 20 years of experience level?
That's a great question. Also, one that gets asked quite often. So here's a myth that I think a lot of people sometimes have, and I just want to be more direct and blunt about it. That time is not a unit of measurement in
Exactly.
in career growth for product folks, right? It may have been for engineering. By the way, I don't think even engineering it should be that way, but it may have been in many companies where unless you spend X number of years in this role, you really don't move to the next role, and so on and so forth. And if you apply that logic, by the time you become VP of engineering, you'll either have gray hair or no hair. Now you are an exception, Piyush. Looks like you've done well, but generally most engineering leaders, are measured in the classic past in terms of time. This is not the case for product roles at all, right? And so time is not even a dimension, and hence what happens is that the unit of measurement for a career growth for a product professional is scope and influence. What is your unit of influence? Are you influencing decisions around a feature? Next level, are you influencing the decisions around ownership of the entire release? Next level, are you influencing and deciding on the entire scope of a product? Next level, are you really influencing and deciding upon multiple product lines? Next level, and so on and so forth, right? So your scope of what you are entrusted with, capable of making decisions, is your unit of growth. And there is absolutely no correlation to time. I've seen in large companies, in my previous life before McAfee, my partner in engineering, as I was a director of products, and my partner, who's the director of engineering, the age difference was so high, Piyush, that he was actually elder than my dad, right? And this is very common, which means that at a very young age you can actually reach the higher levels of so-called influence if you are able to maneuver and build those necessary skills to be able to make good decisions. At the end of the day, it's all about making good decisions. The product management skill is nothing but the ability to make good decisions across the life cycle of that business, right from the beginning of the idea to prototyping it to validation to getting your first 100 customers to then scaling, building right go to market processes, and now having a sustainable revenue. That entire life cycle, you have to make numerous amount of decisions, and a product manager is usually the one who navigates the entire team, who influences the entire team to be able to make those good decisions. And I think that is a number one unit of measurement. Of course, there are other measurements like revenue, speed, customer delight, and there are hundreds of other parameters as well. But the underlying theme that I think one engineer needs to understand, it's not about time. Uh, you can become a vice president of product management in 5 years, and you may take 10 years. It's really up to you, because I don't think the industry really records this
Yes.
as a measurement.
Yeah, I think, and if my question did surprise you, I was trying to play the devil's advocate for a lot of devils out here. At Global Logic, our philosophy always has been, and we use the word impact. Influence is something that used, which kind of is a synonym to what we say. We use the word impact, right? One should be able to have enough belief in oneself to be walking into a CEO's chamber and talking eyeball to eyeball, because that makes what makes somebody what one is. And there's something that has always helped a lot of professionals that I have seen grow very fast. And I think a message that a lot of us should take back from this forum is, it is not about the number of years of experience that we talk about. It's not about the time one spends in a particular role. It almost always is about the impact or the influence that one creates or generates in the industry. And that is very easy to see. I have seen developers with 2 years of experience playing a real critical role in the rollout of a product, and those people are as respected or possibly more respected than somebody with a 15 years of experience but doesn't want to slog, or doesn't want to play the impact role that one wants to. So I think more and more, the whole industry will be driven by individuals who don't care about the level of experience that they have, who don't care about the level of experience that somebody who is sitting in front of them have, and have the audacity and guts to question a decision that needs to be questioned. If a design needs to be questioned, it can be questioned by anybody. It could be a senior developer who questions that design, and it could be a vice president who does not question that design, and eventually, you make the product fail because you did not ask the right questions at the right time. I'll also, as we talk, take some questions that the audience has been throwing up to us. One of them was around market analysis. There's a lot of, proliferation of content that is going on, because content kind of is the king, right? How do you make sense of the content that you have available, and how does a product guy makes it the power, and makes it a tool that one uses for creating better products, rather than getting buried or dumped under the heap of content of information that one has? And what do you do about it? Do you suggest using artificial intelligence to mine that content? What would you suggest or recommend a PO to do?
So one word answer, and I'll try to give a little longer version of this as well, but I think the one word answer is relevance. While there is a lot out there, not just content, but also a lot of inputs that come from a variety of stakeholders, customers, partners, your own management team are going to have passion and ideas about what they think you ought to do. At the end of the day, a product professional is the customer champion inside the company. He or she is the voice of the customer inside the company. As you navigate through these choices, going back to what we discussed about making decisions, you have to find relevance in all of this content. You have to find relevance in all of these statistics, all of the studies, all of the research reports, which often are going to be contradicting, right? On one hand, Gartner says this is where the industry is moving. On the other hand, a group of local action bodies, trade bodies say, no, this is actually not how it's going to be. Now you have to make a decision, and your decision is going to impact the next multi-million dollar product or business unit, right? So I think find relevance. Now easier said than done, right? Piyush, I mean, one thing to say that we should find relevance, but how do you do this? Now, while there is no straight silver bullet on how you do this, I'll tell you the principle that you need to use as you build relevance, as you start seeing things with the lens of relevance, is who is the customer, what is the customer's problem, and why do you want to solve them? If you are clear on these three questions, I think a lot of noise will get filtered out automatically, right? A lot of um, inputs will automatically take a back seat, and all of a sudden it'll almost start shining out in a network map of 6,000 nodes. You'll have these flashing 500 which are of relevance to you if you apply that lens. Now there are a lot of qualitative techniques, right from the most basic customer interviewing empathy mapping, right? Understanding what the customers are feeling, saying, doing, thinking, which is very different. What I say as a customer might be different than what I actually do. I might say that I'm good for environment and I want to go and be good for the environment. And then next thing you see me holding a plastic cup while I'm talking about it, right? And so consumers are consumers. You have to now understand the difference between what they say, what they do, what they feel, and what they think, right? So that is a qualitative example. A quantitative example are a lot of statistical techniques. In fact, a lot of product managers are now equipping them with a lot of data science skills, a lot of decision science, data science as a decision science. I don't mean data science for algorithms and programming and Python. I mean, Python may be still used, but I don't mean like building new algorithms. I mean, leveraging what you already have to be able to make a good decision. So I think between qualitative analysis and quantitative analysis within the market analysis function, if you equip yourself enough, you will be able to see relevance. And content, by the way, is great. 15 years ago, we didn't have LinkedIn as popular. We didn't have these groups. Now there are user-generated content where customers are voluntarily giving you information about what they think is right and what they really want. This makes the life of a product manager, especially when that product manager is remote. Now, this is a big dilemma for you as well, right? When the product manager sits in Bangalore working on a product for the consumer in Brazil or in United States, you have this natural inhibition that how am I going to understand, because I'm not going to United States to talk to them. Well, good news is that thanks to this user generated content, thanks to the digital proliferation of social networks, you can actually now figure out relevance by sitting in Bangalore and figuring out what the American consumer wants in a particular area or a particular problem state, right? So it's actually much easier. Of course, there's a lot more to now digest, but it's much easier to access that content than ever before. For product managers, if you look at 10 years ago, 15 years ago, right? So that's good
I
news.
think I think that's a very great segue to one of the next questions that I found pretty interesting and wanted to discuss and ask on this forum. Right, there's something that is made about the education system in India a lot of times, right? And many times I've heard people commenting that the design, product, and other sensibilities of a lot of developers in India are not as mature as some of the other sophisticated places in the world because of the education system that we have. In my opinion, we are possibly 5 to 10 years past that myth, because a lot of work that I see being done in the field of medical technology or retail or a lot of other products, we feel that we are way past that. There are many features that possibly Flipkart brought in to their products before Amazon. It may be a different thing on how the products are faring, but from an innovation perspective, there's a lot of stuff that's happening here. At GlobalLogic, we do realize and recognize that career is not a one-time education journey. Career is something that is a lifelong education journey, which is why we have built a lot of digital training academies where people keep training across the year, and they have certification levels now also that once somebody enters GlobalLogic, work is not the only thing that is done or is driven. Academy and career and choices are different things that are driven. So if somebody would wish to become an architect in GlobalLogic, we would not tell them go figure. We would actually put them into an architecture academy, and not do a 3 month course on the person, but take them through a 2 year long process where we inculcate Udemy learning, we inculcate classroom trainings, and then we have them shadow an architect so that they slowly become an architect. Right. So
That's
we invest a lot in the careers that people have. But what is your perspective, Pinkesh, on the education system in India being able to create great product guys? And if it does not, or if there are lags, how do you propose to fill those lags?
First of all, I want to applaud you and the team at Global Logic. going to do this, right? I think this is the need of the hour. I think we need to understand that once you graduated from wherever you graduated was not going to be the last time you learned it. I think this myth is very prevalent in all parts of the world, but especially in Southeast Asia, right? So I've already done my graduation, so I'm done. Learning is done, learning is over, and the next 25 years is going to be a joyride. Well, I have some bad news, I'm sure that you already know this. That's not going to happen. I think continuous learning is the only way to stay relevant in today's world, just because the things are changing at a pace which nobody ever envisioned. And I think companies providing that learning path, if you will, right? Married to their interest, married to their skill, curiosity. I think is a brilliant thing, and I think I wish more and more companies kind of follow and invest that time and energy in doing this. Now, coming back to the question that Piyush asked, I think the fundamental problem in the way the system has been operating, while there are hundreds of problems, and we may require another session just to talk about the education system, I have some strong views now that I've spent last 6 7 years into it. And I'm not an academician. I've never been in academician world. I'm a hardcore practitioner, a hardcore engineer who happened to be in this space. One more accidental area, right? As I mentioned in my journey. But I think there is a lot of innovation still left to be done in this world. But if I were to summarize this in the interest of time, uh, learning by listening has to be replaced with learning by doing, right? And I think that's the fundamental shift. If we can just adopt this, in the top 500 education institutions in this country, others may take a while, but let's say the first top 500, I think we will be 100x better than where we are today in terms of producing, a talent, producing workforce, which is kind of, innovation ready, if you will, not just job ready, but innovation ready. And I think this is the fundamental difference, right? Our system allows us to acquire knowledge, is set up for design, is designed to create acquisition of knowledge. And by the way, that acquisition of knowledge comes with a nice, pretty poster at the end called a certificate, a shiny, a badge or a degree that I will hang on my wall, or at least keep it in my archives and flash it on my LinkedIn profile. But what really needs to happen is the systems need to be designed to acquire skills, not knowledge. Right? Knowledge is good, knowledge is important, but to acquire skills. And I think the difference between these two is vast. And I think every professional who is on this call or may be interested in this subject, I think should pay attention to this. Just because I have literacy for something doesn't mean I have the skills for it. Right? I think knowing something is literacy. Yeah, I may talk a little bit about the stock market, and I may talk a little bit about which, Chinese cuisine is good or bad, but I may not have the skills to cook Chinese. I may not know how the economy functions to fix the economy, which
Sure.
means you do not have skills, right? And so I think that's the delta that I think the system needs to provide more and more of, but the individual needs to seek out and have a preference for skills versus literacy.
I think since we are approaching the end of time, I'll I'll try and wrap it up with two 10-second questions. Objective type 10
Sure.
second question
So,
comes
so
to the
this is
top of.
so is this the version of the coffee with Karan where you get gift hampers when you answer right?
What are the top three skills that you would want product guys to work on?
I think empathy, ability to understand the problems and the customer, getting the customer's mindset and understanding their view. Second would be strong problem-solving skills. Now that you understood the problem, how do I apply that, Jugaad innovation or lean methodologies to solve that problem in the most optimal way? And third, I think would be influence. Um,
That took 15 seconds.
sorry. So it took a little longer. Yes. So I failed your first test.
Let's try again.
Uh,
What are the top three pitfalls that you'd want product guys to avoid?
don't solve right away without knowing what's going on. Uh, don't be in the blind spot that I have literacy, so I know it. Um, and third is develop curiosity. Why? You know, why are we
Sure.
doing this? So,
Perfect. I think in it's been a great session, Pinkesh, and I think there's one thing that most of us align on, and that's one thing that I've respected you for, and something that we profess at Global Logic, right? One thing that becomes very clear, and that I think is a key takeaway I would want to leave the audience with, is that each of us, we own our own careers. We are the masters of our own destiny and our own careers. And I think we should do all we can. All of us have 20, 25, 30-year careers nowadays, and we may be somewhere in that journey. For the rest of our journeys, we should all take very cognizant, coherent decisions, not go by the biases and impulses that we have, and really own our careers to become what we can become. We should become the best version of ourselves, and that is what all of us should aim to. If that means taking the road less traveled, it may be a cliche, but I think that is the best cliche that I've ever heard. If that means taking the road less traveled, I think go for it. There's a lot of safety net in the world today, and all of us are here to provide that safety net to all of you. In case you try something out and fail, that is a lot better than not trying something out.
now that I'm going to practice in saying something more succinctly, here's my one liner. I think don't be a generalist, become a cross functional specialist. So that would be my parting thought. But happy to take some questions. I know we're kind of running out of time. Happy to take them offline. Feel free to ping me, on LinkedIn, and happy to connect and answer some of those questions as well. Because I see a lot of questions kind of piling up, and I don't know if we got a chance to answer. But happy to help later.
Sure, Pinkesh. It has been great having you here, and our coordinates are and will be on LinkedIn. A recording of this show will also be available so that somebody can look at it offline. It has been a great pleasure having you, and look forward to more associations together, and look forward to the great audience which has been very inquisitive, very supportive of us, and we're all here to provide you great career options. So go for it. Thank you.